Let's move on to our last session for the day, that is on Legal 101, Safeguard Measures for Licensees Due to COVID-19. Let me introduce our speaker for this session. It's Mr. Jonathan Becker, President Anjar Company Co. LLC. Thank you, Jonathan, for your valuable time. Over to you. Hi, Jonathan.
Okay. Good morning. Can everybody hear me and see me, hopefully?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for inviting me here to speak today. I'm going to talk today about legal remedies that may be available to licensees and licensors in view of the COVID-19 situation, and more specifically about the options that both the licensee and even the licensor have with regard to the contract, the license agreement. So let me just start by giving you a little bit of my background. I see that you've put up my background information here, but I want to also talk about my background with respect to the perspective that I have on things here today. So just so you understand, I am an attorney. My background is in IP law. I specialize in patents, trademarks, copyrights, and licensing law in particular. I have been focused on licensing in the toy industry for the past 35 plus years. In fact, I grew up in the toy industry, and I'll give you a little bit of that background as well. So I am an attorney, but I'm also a businessman and an academic. As a businessman, first, I try to look for the practical. I try to look for how solutions can resolve issues rather than create or confront problems in an adversarial way. So as a businessman, I represent, on the most part, licensors. But as a lawyer with an international patent and trademark firm for many years, I represented both licensors and licensees in a wide and diverse fields as diverse as ventricular assist devices, cochlear implants, and of course, toys. As an educator, I am an adjunct professor at the Fashion Institute of Technology, where 32 years ago, they created the first 4-year college degree program in toy design. I co-wrote that curriculum and have taught business practices there since the beginning of the program, focusing on legal protection for the toy industry, and in particular patents, trademarks, and copyrights, trade secrets, and licensing. So finally, I'm the president of Anjar Company, a company that my dad founded 52 years ago. Jim Becker was a famous toy inventor. He's recognized as a pioneer in licensing, as the 74th inductee into the Toy Industry Hall of Fame in 2018. We develop our own IP at Anjar, but we also represent IP owners for licensing their products and brands. So I work with licensors and licensees in licensing and in representing their products as well. I work with Patty, my wife, who has her own company called Becker Associates. Patty has a 40-year background in the toy industry, specializing in early childhood development and education. She represents inventors and entrepreneurs, helping them develop and license their ideas. So with that understanding of my background, and I want to be sure you understand that my perspective is primarily of a business one. Understanding the legal issues allows me, I think, to better understand the business situation and to deal on a business level with my customers rather than, as I said, on a legal level. So let's address the issues that have arisen in view of the COVID-19 situation and what steps we should take, licensees and licensors should take at this stage. First, I strongly urge everyone to review their contract very carefully, reviewing both the business terms and the financial terms, including the specific payment provisions as to the due dates and the amounts due. Look at what constitutes a technical breach or cause for termination in that license agreement, and look at the procedure for terminating that contract. All of these will give you a fuller understanding of not only the situation you're in, but the possible solutions, including the provisions that may address how to cure a default and the remedies that the contract will provide. And importantly, the period in which the licensee has and is allowed to cure their default or their breach. So only the specific agreement can address those issues. There are also other very important provisions that a licensee needs to be aware of. Some of those provisions will impact whether the contract can continue, including the potential for what's known as a cross-terminating provision. Some license agreements will be terminated if other license agreements by that licensee are in default. In other words, a breach of one agreement will cause termination in all contracts. So you need to know whether there is such cross-terminating provisions in your license agreements. The question that's coming up most often now and is most relevant to licensees today is what's known as the force majeure provision. Force majeure essentially allows for the suspension, this is temporary suspension of the obligations of the parties as long as that situation, as long as that event is existing. These events generally include things like acts of God, fire, flood, earthquake. It may also enumerate a pandemic as a condition which would allow for the temporary suspension of the obligations of the agreement. Regardless of whether or not your agreement allows for suspension of the agreement and the licensee's payment obligations and other obligations during this time, there are other options that a licensee has. Very important options exist even where you do not have a force majeure clause. So there's always the situation that one can point to of impossibility. So impossibility or frustration of purpose will often come up as a basis for claiming that non-compliance of the agreement or default should be excused. So even without a force majeure clause and without a force majeure clause specifically stating the cause that we are suffering from a pandemic, it is possible that the licensee can find other relief. So a force majeure clause only allows you to suspend temporarily your obligations because of the impossibility of the situation. You are forgiven for as long as that lasts. Now, that's not permanent. And most force majeure clauses have a limited period of time, usually 3 months. But there may also be an opportunity in that same force majeure clause for the licensor to terminate. So you need to study the agreement, and specifically if there's a force majeure clause, whether the right to suspend or even the right of the licensor to terminate exists. So force majeure may work to excuse all or part of your obligations while this pandemic is going on. And even if there isn't a force majeure clause, there are other recourses that you may be able to take. Keep in mind that this is a partnership between the licensor and the licensee. The licensor is motivated to find a solution to resolve the situation. The licensor understands, as we all do, the present situation, but also understands that most licensees are in the situation that you're in. However, there are licensors who want to look, and from what we see, a majority of licensors want to take the situation on a case-by-case basis. So while they will look to work out, in many cases, a solution with the licensee, they also need to look at the specific circumstances. In our industry, for example, in the toy industry, there are some sectors that are actually overperforming. Sectors like puzzles and outdoor equipment, their sales are surging in those categories. So the licensor might say that it's not necessary or reasonable to suspend the licensee's obligations where they're doing a good business. But certainly, many licensees are suffering and they need solutions, and licensors know this. So let's talk about briefly a couple of the common solutions that we are seeing and that we are implementing ourselves. And probably the first one that I recommend, and that is being used certainly by many licensors, is the concept of extending the guarantee period. As you know, licensees have a minimum royalty guarantee for a period, sometimes by quarter, sometimes by year. And licensors are, in many cases, willing to extend what would ordinarily be a quarter or a year for a longer period of time. For example, a year can turn into a year and a half. So beginning the third quarter this year, for agreements we're signing, licensees can have the year through 2021. So this eases the burden on the licensee. We also are in negotiations on a case-by-case basis with our licensees to defer payments, to reduce payments, and in some cases to reduce or eliminate minimum guarantees so that the only obligation of the licensee is to pay on actual sales. So that's a true partnership there as well. When the licensee isn't burdened by guarantees or commitments that they are unable to make or achieve in these circumstances. So again, working this out is something in the licensor's and the licensee's interest. In our business, of paramount importance are good business relations. And so there is a lot of uncertainty from a licensor's point of view of squeezing a licensee too hard. First of all, if they squeeze so hard, licensee may go away and they'll get nothing. And of course, they want an ongoing relationship with this licensee in many cases. So they're often looking for amicable solutions to resolve these issues and to reduce the pressure on the licensee. For example, as I said, extending the minimum guarantee periods. Other solutions we've seen is cross-collateralizing contracts, where contract for one product can be applied to another. The minimum guarantees spread over multiple contracts. So there are solutions, and they start with a plan. I suggest everyone have a plan to discuss with their licensor and propose whether it's a deferred payment schedule, a removal of certain guarantees, or an extension of those guarantees. Again, most licensors are looking at the situation on a case-by-case basis and are willing, in most cases, to resolve these things in a friendly way. Avoiding legal disputes is something that I look to do at any opportunity. Resolving things in a business-like manner is the goal of any businessman. Taking things into a courtroom presents all kinds of problems, not the least of which is the uncertainty of any resolution in a courtroom situation, in addition to the high costs of such legal action. So in short, I will say that licensors have an interest in resolving difficult situations for licensees. Licensees need to approach licensors with a plan, or should take affirmative steps and find solutions that help resolve these problems on a friendly, on an amicable basis. So I think that concludes my discussion on what licensees are facing today and the approach that they should be taking to find solutions. I will also add that licensees understand the value of a license, the value added to a license, and the licensor understands that this is a symbiotic relationship and is motivated to maintain its relationships with licensees so that the licensing business for them continues as well. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, for sharing your insights. Let's move on to the Q&A sessions now. Can we connect Naresh Ahuja online, please? Naresh, could you unmute and ask your question? Hello, Naresh, can you unmute and ask your question, please? I'll ask the question, Jonathan. He says that, say a license develops the brand in the area, and if the licensor themselves decide to enter into that category and do not want to renew the contract, what are the steps then?
Okay, could you please repeat? So the licensor does not want to renew the contract. That's all I was able to hear. Could you repeat the full question?
Say a license develops the brand in the area, and if the licensor themselves decide to enter into that category and do not renew the contract for the same.
Yes. Okay, so what are the implications of that? Is that the question of such a situation? Well, you know, a licensor often is in the business, at least in a related business to the licensee, or may think that they can profit from it. It's important that your agreements specify, in all cases, that neither the licensor or the licensee can compete directly with the other party during the term of the agreement. In fact, as a licensor, I expect that the licensee won't compete directly with my item even after. But the fact is that licensors see the profit that the licensee is making, and they want to take on the product. I want to add something else with regard to a solution that this question raises also. I've seen licensors now purchase licensees' products and sell them themselves through their channels of distribution. And so that helps licensees out as well by adding an additional channel of distribution. So they're not competitors there. In that case, they're actually partnering with them. But to the questioner, I would say it's important that your license agreement have the provisions that prohibit this kind of direct competition, either directly during the agreement or directly after, and in particular where the goods are confusingly similar. Because what they're doing, of course, is they're taking advantage of the publicity and success that the licensee had with the product, with the brand, and converting it to their own. But again, you have to look to the terms of the agreement to see if it's allowed or not. Okay?
Great. Isha, you have another question?
Okay.
Yes, sir. So could we have Supratim? Could you unmute and ask your question?
Post-COVID, this situation currently, what is the situation we are going through? Post-COVID, what would be the initiative all over the world for the business development? Will it be the same before COVID, or will there is something new change we will going to see?
Okay, so if I understand your question, you're asking what will change as a result of the COVID situation. That's really all I was able to get to hear. Can you elaborate what specifically what you meant? What kind of changes were you referring to?
Approach to the customers. That is my main focus. Because currently we are approaching the customer in the online, digital platforms and other things. So physical connection with the customer, will it change, and the online system will remain the same, or maybe there is something combo system will implemented?
Well, I think it's fair to say that no one knows what the future will hold. This is uncharted territory for everyone. What I do think, though, from how I've seen the licensing industry evolve over the last 40 years, is it's very adaptable. So I have no doubt that we will adapt as we have largely done over the past weeks to greater online presence and greater communications. But I think we all understand that the interpersonal contact is a strong element in selling, and selling is something we all have to do regardless of what business we're in. So that personal contact, I have to hope will come back to some extent. But do I think it has changed forever, that the way we've done business in the past? Absolutely. We're already, of course, doing a lot more online business. And the businesses that are succeeding in this situation best are the businesses that have adapted and have a greater percentage of their sales online. So that's clearly where we were heading before. And I think the situation has only accelerated that development. Okay.
That's all for now. There's one question from Roger Berman. Could we have Roger Berman? Could he unmute and ask the question? I'll ask the question on his behalf. If a licensing agent is involved, okay, he's there. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Jonathan. I know Laura quite well. I hope you both get safe in these circumstances.
Thank you.
I'm taking part from Tokyo. Thank you to Franchise India for organizing this. So if a licensing agent is involved in the arrangement with the licensor and licensee, the agent may get squeezed on its cash flow if the licensor is giving minimum guarantee relief to the licensee. Are there any solutions for an agent in such a situation?
Well, that's a great question, considering that we are an agent and that's a large part of our business. So once again, I would have to say the solutions require a collective effort and collective sacrifices in that regard. And so clearly the agent's success is tied to the licensor and the licensee. And so they're an integral part of any solution. So unfortunately, yes, the agent will be affected in his or her capacity as an agent. And yet, we have to value our relationships enough to understand that going forward, there will be a light at the end of this tunnel, even if it isn't there now. So my primary concern at this point, other than, of course, having the necessary cash flow for our licensees to survive, is to live another day and make the accommodations that we all need to make. So frankly, it's a collective effort. And I see that the agents are making the same sacrifices. We are deferring payments. We are eliminating some guarantees. We are cross-collateralizing them so that one contract can be applied to others. So we're trying to sacrifice along with our licensors and licensees, and I really think that's what everyone has to see this as. For lack of a better phrase, we are all in it together, and we all need to have a collective solution. I hope that's responsive.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Roger. Thanks for joining. Isha, do we conclude?
Yes, we can conclude, sir.
So, Jonathan, thank you very much. That was very helpful. I know for sure that we are all in it together, but business requires a certain amount of legal complexities, and experts like you are advising us how to sort of minimize our risks there. So, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, delegates. I know it's been a long session, and but we are very happy to have concluded this this first virtual event. License India organizes the only licensing trade show in the country, and the team at License India has thought that it was a great opportunity for us to bring experts as well as attendees from all over the world in this virtual half-day program, and I'm very thankful that all of you have taken time out and joined here. We will be back with another addition to this, and till that time, I would like to sort of leave you with the thought that this is the time when new opportunities would come. These are the times which are challenging times, and you all need to know, do your bit in terms of managing your relationships. So relationships will go stronger. Opportunities would emerge out of them, and this is a time of a lot of innovation which is happening. A lot of creativity is happening within the confines of the limitations that we have. So I wish you good health, safety, and hope to see you back in both physical as well as virtual events very soon. So thank you very much, and thank you my co-hosts here for joining, and thank you, Jonathan, for a very insightful presentation there.
Thank you, Jonathan, for your time.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
And I would like to thank everybody else for this insightful discussion. Our esteemed panelists, thank you for all the attendees for having this wonderful session. We wish to see you again in near future, and hopefully offline and not in the confines of our houses. Please fill in a short survey for us to get the relevant feedback on this webinar. Also, you can follow our social media account of License India. Stay healthy, stay safe, everyone. Let's fight this virus together. Thank you.
Thank you, Isha. You've been great. Thank you.
Thank you.